What's up, everyone? Eddie Mercado here with BloodyElbow.com, and I'm about to speak with the World Series of Fighting CEO, Carlos Silva. Of course, there's a big World Series of Fighting event this Friday up in Mashantucket, Connecticut. So, yeah, let's go ahead and talk to the CEO and see what he says about the company's performance as of late and maybe where the company is headed. Hello.
Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Eddie, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Mr. Carlos Silva. How are you doing?
No complaints. Things are good.
I like to hear that. Of course, you are the CEO of World Series of Fighting, and there will be a huge event this Friday at the World Series of Fighting 31, which will be in Mashantucket, Connecticut at the Foxwoods Resort Casino. So
That is correct.
It has been 1 year since you have joined the World Series of Fighting. How would you assess, what exactly?
I think I saw him 2 weeks on my clock, just for the record.
We're just shy. We're just shy.
Funny.
So,
how would I assess things? I would say that in a year, the World Series of Fighting has come a long way. I think we've really sort of solidified the fighting foundation of the organization. I think when I joined, and Mike, keep me honest, I think we were at WSOF 22, which I think was the August fight at Planet Hollywood. Is that right? Or was that America? Yeah, Planet Hollywood. Planet Hollywood in August. That's right. And I think at the time we were a real good fighting organization. I think in the year we've built on that foundation. I think we've brought in some key media folks. We've integrated guys like Mike, I think, in a much more meaningful way into the business. And he really, as you know, being a media property, you need good communications. The thing about Mike is he also doesn't just bring us PR and communications; he brings us a deep knowledge in the fighting space and how leagues have emerged with his strike force past.
Okay. And of course,
and I think
I'm sorry, you're speaking of Mike Mersch, of course.
No, I'm speaking Mike Afromowicz, who's on the phone.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the COO of the World Series.
Because Mike was a bit of a kind of a part-timer that was kind of here and there, but over the last 12 months he's become a key member of the team as well. And so I think what we've done in the last year is we've relaunched a website. We've started to build out content on the social side on a day-to-day basis. I think we're starting to really let people get to know our fighters a little more than before. And I think a couple of guys have really emerged over that last 12 months as well as being, top tier guys. And, the two that I like to talk about are Justin Gaethje and Marlon Moraes. And, I think we pride ourselves that those guys have really come up, literally from the gym all the way to the big leagues in the last year. And I think if I could be honest about World Series of Fighting, I think we've just become, maybe over the last 3 or 4 or 5 months in that last year, been regarded by folks like yourselves and the other sort of fighting and media press in general as being one of the top 3. And I think that's important. I think it's great for World Series of Fighting, and I think it's a big accomplishment to do that and sort of solidify that over the last 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. So you brought in a bunch of media guys and you're doing a lot more marketing nowadays. Can you speak on to some of the short-term goals you have for the World Series?
The short-term goal, I don't know that. I think that was maybe even more of a question for a year ago. I think, it's going to sound like a funny way to answer it, but, the short-term goals have been to start looking more long-term. I really think as an organization, going back a year, we were very much focused every 30 days on what we needed to do for the next fight. And, we're planning for 2017 now, because if you're going to be a media organization and you're going to bring in new sponsors and you're going to create new platforms and you're going to create new kinds of events that both your partner NBC, your digital partners that we've got, as well as your sponsors want, you need to plan that in June for, February and March and April of 2017. That's just the way it works. And I think that's really been the big transition over the last 6 months, that I think we've every month that goes by, we've continued to stretch out our horizon of planning so that we can match up with the planning horizon of other big companies that we want to partner with us. Because, when you're talking to, even Alienware, which is one of our, biggest sponsors, they're owned by Dell, a big company. They don't plan 30 days in advance. They plan 12 and 18 months in advance. And
Right.
so they want to know what we're doing in 2017 so that they can talk to their media buyers and their product launches and all of those things in advance. And I think that's part of the maturity that we've brought to World Series of Fighting over the last year.
Okay. Now, of course, we have the World Series of Fighting 31 on June 17th, this Friday. And then we have World Series of Fighting 32, which will be July 30th. Now, past that, I couldn't find any scheduled events. So is there going to be like a release of maybe the rest of the year's calendar?
Yeah, we actually had a calendar out earlier. We had a few venue changes. There's an event in September, an event in October. We've already released and talked about our Veterans Day event, which is featuring a new package that we put together called Who's the Toughest, which is November 12th. And then we've actually got some announcements coming in December that we've been holding on to that in the next 30 days we'll be putting out, which are pretty exciting with our media partner, NBC. Okay.
Now let me ask you this. On the same day as the World Series of Fighting 32, there's also the World Series of Fighting GC3. Now, can you expand on whether or exactly how closely the two are affiliated?
Well, World Series of Fighting Global Championship is a licensor of World Series of Fighting. World Series of Fighting is the parent company, and GC is exactly that. They're the global championships, and they put on fights. It's been mostly in Asia, but they've done fights all over the world with some of their partners that they've got. And we promote each other. We share, they obviously use the World Series of Fighting brand as part of their licensing agreement. And we've got a lot of things in place where we can share fighters, we can do fights together. They're just doing, I think, 3. I think it's WSOF GC3, if I'm correct.
Yes, sir.
And so they're just at the beginning of their life cycle. But you'll see on our website and on their social media, we do a lot of cross promotion for each other. And share the parent company World Series of Fighting as a brand.
Okay, so we could definitely see some World Series of Fighting contenders go over to the World Series of Fighting Global and kind of put on performances overseas.
Absolutely, we can. We're partners, and so as they grow and as we grow, if there's opportunities, we share information. We put each other's press releases out. We let them know what we're doing, and like any good parent, we try and help our child.
Okay. Now let's shift gears a little bit. I want to ask you personally, what are your thoughts on this kind of new MMA free agency that's been going on as of late? And can you kind of elaborate on that and exactly what the World Series of Fighting is doing in terms of recruiting new talent?
Yeah, look, I think some of it is, maybe it's the good and bad little rolled together around the maturity of the sport that, the UFC, has built, so hard over the last 20 years. You can look at any, I've been in the sports and media space my entire career, and partnered with, every major league, whether it's, baseball, football, soccer, the PGA Tour, NASCAR, all of them have different issues with the way that they deal with their athletes. And I think, maybe the good news is some of this free agency is happening because now there's other leagues that have emerged other than the UFC. I mean, we obviously know about Bellator on Viacom and Spike, and now you've got World Series of Fighting on NBC, and there's some other opportunities for these athletes. And so I just think it's, some of it's the maturity of the sport, and we're not 5 years or 8 years into MMA anymore. We're 20 years into 20 plus years into professional MMA, and certainly 15 years on national media platforms. And look, I mean, even the UFC went down free agency a little bit when they moved from Spike to Fox. So that was that they used free agency on cable networks to move from one cable network to a broadcaster, and so I just think it's just part of what happens in sport.
Okay, would you say it benefits the fighters more or promotions more?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it's I'd like to think there's ways that it can benefit both. I think if the promotion and the fighters have a good relationship, they're going to continue renewing and stay where they are if they're happy. If there's an opportunity, I mean, look, we see it in baseball. There's a high-priced pitcher, and sometimes that high-priced pitcher gets to the end of his contract and he tests the market and he goes somewhere else. I think being a guy that runs one of the major promotions, and it can be difficult to lose one of the guys that you've built up. But if your business is healthy and you have a good relationship with that fighter, you try and keep them. So I just think it's really on a case by case basis, depending on the fighter, the time in the promotion, what other big shows are coming up, and even how that fighter helps promote your fights and and the league that you operate in. So I don't know that it's an easy question. I think it varies from fighter to fighter and from athlete to athlete and league to league. I really do.
Okay. Well, staying on the same topic of kind of handling fighters and contracts and whatnot, what's the official report on Rousimar Palhares, who has went ahead and fought outside of the World Series of Fighting, even though he's still under contract?
I mean, you just gave me the statement back that I was going to give you back. He fought, and there's a contract that he's got with World Series of Fighting, and we didn't suspend him. The commission did, and we take our relationships with the commissions very seriously, and so we're waiting to be told from the commission when Rousimar can fight, and when he can, he's got a home and a contract with World Series of Fighting.
Okay, so there's no bad blood there between the World Series of Fighting and Palhares as far as him competing outside of his contract.
No, there's no bad blood. I mean, Rousimar felt like he had to go. I think he fought over in Italy, if I'm correct, and that's something that he's got to. If he felt like he needed to do that, but we weren't gonna go against a commission that we work with often that has given him a 2-year suspension, and so we're just waiting until the commission tells us that he can fight again. And when he can, we'll reach out to his camp, like we do with all of our athletes, and find him a fight. And if he's interested or not interested, we'll address it at that time.
Okay. Now, in his last fight, he was knocked out in 45 seconds. Now, that could hurt his brand a little bit. Now, does that leave room for the World Series of Fighting to maybe renegotiate his contract upon his return, or will he continue to have the same contract he had when he was suspended?
Yeah, it's all speculation. I mean, he fought, he got knocked out. We all saw it. And again, we're just sitting and waiting till the commission tells us he can fight. And if he goes and keeps fighting, and wins or loses, we'll address it when the commission tells us he can fight. I mean, in the meantime, honestly, to us, it doesn't, it doesn't really matter because he's been suspended by the commission, for 2 years. So from our perspective, he's suspended by the commission.
Okay. Is there any chance of maybe signing the guy that knocked him out, perhaps?
He just signed with the UFC.
Oh, did he sign with the UFC?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, the short answer to any of those is there's always a chance that, any guy, whether he knocked Palhares out or anyone else. I mean, if there's interesting fighters that are talented that are looking for a home, and it works within their contract, that we're not violating anyone's contract. We want to play it above board and talk to fighters when the opportunity's there.
Okay. Is there any more news or recent news about Jake Shields? Will we see him back in the World Series of Fighting anytime soon?
Yeah, I think you will. And I know Ray and Jake have spoken a number of times, and they're continuing to talk. And as soon as we have some news there, Mike will be happy to let you know.
Okay. Now, where do you see women's MMA fitting into your business model?
I think it fits. I think it fits if the division, if there's enough female athletes in the division that we could put together. Actually, Ray's gone on the record a few times, and I support him because he's our matchmaker. That just to put 2 fights on or 3 fights doesn't make a division. So if we can put a division together that makes sense, we'd be more than interested to do it. It's just that, we just haven't been able to do that in the recent months. So he keeps his eyes and ears open and is trying to cobble that together. Okay.
Now, speaking of Ray Sefo, is there any chance we'll see him inside of the World Series of Fighting as far as competing?
Ray hasn't competed, I think, since WSOF 1, if I'm correct. If you follow him on Twitter, you see him training all the time. He's doing a lot of coaching. I guess I would say, never say never. Ray's a great world champion and a great fighter. And, if he came to me and said, I'm ready and I really want to do it, we talk about it. But for the moment, he's training and coaching and helping a lot of young fighters out of Randy's gym, Extreme Couture, right in Vegas.
Okay. All right. Now, let me ask you this about the World Series of Fighting itself. Who exactly is backing the operation? We've got a bunch of very committed private investors that have really been since with World Series of Fighting since day one, and then we've got a great media partner in NBC, and between our investors and what we do with our media partner and our sponsors, we fund the operation and continue to move it forward. Okay. Do you know if they were involved at all with the UFC buying, the talks about the sale of the UFC at all? Do you know if they were involved with that? No, not as far as I know. Okay. I think that's UFC. I think that's UFC's business. So I mean, we've read the same things that you've read, and we wish them best on whatever they think is the right direction to go with the UFC. Okay. When will we see the World Series of Fighting on NBC, mainstream NBC? It's an excellent question, and I would say stay tuned. Nothing to release yet on that? No, not yet. Okay, I got one more question for you. All right, so if you could kind of look down the road a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, where will the World Series of Fighting be? I think World Series of Fighting will be a main, even more of a mainstay. I think we've entered, we've entered the top 3. We're solidly in that top 3 now over the course of the last year.
And I think with what we're doing with our partners at NBC, we'll continue to be sort of, on the minds of maybe not just the fight fans, but a little bit more the general consumer. You've got to give a lot of credit to, Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, and, some of the other, really, mainstream fighters that are in the UFC. And I think, I think we all want to have that kind of recognition. And I think, look, we're not even 3 years into our organization, so we're a good 10 or 15 years behind. But I think over the next couple of years, you'll continue to see with the help of NBC and the help of IMG that helps us around the world distributing our shows. I think, we'll start to break through from just the core fighting fans that I think support us in a big way to also having, the more of the mainstream NBC Sports and NBC fans support us. And that's really what that's why we're here, is to, be a great, a great sports brand. And we'll continue to build that over the next couple of years.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Definitely thank you for taking out the time. I know you're very busy. You got a big fight week ahead of you. And again, I'm Eddie Mercado with Bloody Elbow. And I look forward to seeing you. I should be attending the event on Friday, so hopefully I will see you up there.
Super. Yeah, make sure I'll come by. We'll chat a little bit, Eddie, and I appreciate your coverage as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. Looking forward to seeing you.
Thanks, Mike. I'll see you up there.
Okay, see you, Eddie.
Bye. There you have it, man. Carlos Silva, the CEO, the head honcho of the World Series of Fighting. This Friday is all going down. Heavyweight title is on the line. Mashantucket, Connecticut, the Foxwoods Casino Resort. Tune in. It's going to be good. Fights start at 9 p.m. You can find them on NBC Sports. The prelims will be streaming online. And, yeah, you can find me on Twitter at the Eddie Mercado. You can read me on Bloody Elbow. And until next time, peace.